So, good afternoon, everybody. The time is already 4 o'clock in the afternoon for those of you that are in Beijing. For other people in Europe, I say good morning. So, I see that my colleague from Emirates, Richard, is already online. If maybe Vanessa would like to make him a co-organizer so he can very smoothly later participate. So just to introduce myself at the beginning, my name is Halldor Berg. I am the country representative from EURAXESS China. Thank you so much for joining us today for this little information session about COVID-19 funding in European countries and from the European Union that is available for Chinese collaboration. So this is the focus of today's event. We're going to be focusing on, in the first part of the event, we will going to focus mostly on the Horizon 2020 calls that are available. These are more than 100 million euros worth of funding available to different topics related to COVID-19 funding. And then after that, we will also introduce a little bit those services that are available in China and Europe to help Chinese researchers and Chinese companies to connect with these sort of options. So the organizers of today's event are EURAXESS in China and also Emirates, the EU-China Innovation Hub. We both have an office in Beijing, and we are here to share our experience on this topic. I just want to make it clear at the beginning that some of these topics are very specialized for different types of research fields. So it's clear that we might not be the experts on maybe some of the more technical details of this. Nor are we any authority when it comes to share the information about the details of these calls. In the end, it's only the evaluator of these calls that can, say for certain about like some of these things. But we can share with you what we do know, which is quite a bit. EURAXESS has quite a bit of experience sharing information about Horizon 2020 calls with Chinese researchers and in China. So we know maybe the most frequently encountered problems and so on. I'm also joined here today with my colleagues from EURAXESS China, Vanessa and Anna. So they will going to be follow the chat box during the event. So I will encourage you to, if you have any questions during the presentations, to just immediately ask them on the chat box, and my colleagues will collect them. And we will have a time at the end to go over the questions and see which questions we're able to answer quickly. In other cases, we will maybe not be able to answer the questions, but we will definitely be able to follow up on the questions, refer you to the right contacts, and so on. Okay, so I will then start by sharing my screen so you can see the presentation that we have prepared. Is the screen visible right now? Well, I certainly hope it is. So
yes.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Vanessa. Good. So maybe I'll first point you towards the QR code in the left bottom. This is for you to access the WeChat group for this event. We have very good experience with these kind of WeChat groups. A lot of times during the events, people will start thinking about a lot of things, and then in the days that follows, they will maybe have questions that pop in their mind. And through the WeChat groups, they can continue sort of the discussions with the organizers. We can continue talking about these things, share information, and other things like this. I think sometimes a lot of the magic happens after the event, I'm going to give you a minute to scan this QR code. Some of you are probably already in the WeChat group. If you registered with a WeChat ID at the beginning, we have already added you to the group. The WeChat ID is totally private though. We always discard it after the event. We don't collect any information about that. It's just to make sure that you can join this group and we can like enjoy the benefits of WeChat. So, like I said at the beginning, the topic of today's presentation is COVID-19 research opportunities in Europe. We are organized by EURAXESS, which I work for. I'm a country representative of EURAXESS, and ENRITS, the European Network of Research and Innovation Centers in China and hubs in China. And my colleague Richard Dung, which you can see over here, he is gonna follow up with his own presentation after mine, explaining a little bit about ENRICH. But let me first tell you a little bit about EURAXESS, because that's the part that I work for. I just want to maybe clarify a little bit sort of the background of who we are. EURAXESS is an initiative from the European Commission. So we are run by the European Commission, and our job is sort of to create a network of researchers, individual researchers like most of you, all over the world, to connect and facilitate researchers' mobility between the European research area and other major research areas in the world. So we have offices all over. We have offices in every major places in the world. Also, we have like hundreds and hundreds of offices all over Europe, and we've had our office in China also for 10 years. And we help Chinese researchers to connect with the European research area. We share information about funding that is available to you guys, and we also help you to find partners. We share information. We do networking events. We do other things like this. We also help European researchers that want to come to China. So if you're working for an institution that is receiving a lot of European researchers, this is a great service that we can help you to figure out how to do this. And we help these European researchers after they're here and to create this kind of bridge between China and Europe. We're a big believer in the value of international research collaboration. And in these times of coronavirus and so on, we have seen more than ever how important it is to trust in science, trust that the biggest sort of the research powers in the world can work together to find a solution to this. The value of it has never been more clear as far as I'm concerned. So the European research area is basically the combined research capacity of all the different European countries, member states of the European Union, the associated countries to the European Union and Horizon 2020, and then also obviously the European Union itself. We call this together the European Research Area because they're all sort of work together. They're all linked to each other. Researchers within this area, they're mobile. They're allowed to freely flow in between. There are all these funding schemes that are all connected. So when you think about countries like France and Germany, Spain, Italy, etc., you're thinking about the European research area, because all of them on their own are very, very big and impactful, but they also rely heavily on this European research dimension. And the European research area is a very excellent place to do research, as I'm sure all of you know. It is very diverse with a lot of different countries and cultures involved. It's very creative and has a lot of excellent research output, as you could just see in in numbers of publications and good institutions in Europe. EURAXESS, we are here to sort of connect people to this European research area. So we help Chinese researchers not only to connect with the European Union, but also the whole European research area. If you're interested in particular member state countries like Germany or France, let's say, we can help you to connect with the research authorities and institutions in these countries as well, help you find funding from these particular places, etc. So I want to just like really quickly explain the research landscape in the European Union. Only a couple of minutes, so you have some background and context before we continue talking about the research opportunities available. So within the European research area, there are maybe two main sources of funding to be considered. The first pillar on the left here on the screen is Horizon 2020, which is the research framework program of the European Union. And on the right, we have the pillar, which is the individual EU countries. So the Horizon 2020 is a research framework program. It's one of the biggest in the world. It has more than 80 billion euros. It's very, very significant. It's bigger than almost any other singular research funding program. But it's only a small part of the research funding available in the EU, because each of the EU countries themselves have a lot of funding available themselves. So altogether, the European research area is quite big. But if we look at the Horizon 2020, we can maybe see two different types of funding that we here in EURAXESS are used to share with people in China. And I would like to distinguish between, let's say, individual funding and then sort of this bigger institutional funding. So what do I mean by that? I mean that a lot of the times when I'm talking to Chinese researchers, what we are sort of promoting is what we call like individual funding. For example, mobility funding, the Mars-Skłodowska-Curie actions, or the European Research Council. When one researcher gets a lot of money to do like some one research project. But in addition to that, there's also a lot of other types of funding in the Horizon 2020, which involve maybe more of institutional networks that apply together to do huge research projects together. That's like maybe 10, 20 million euros. So that's like something like the Research and Innovation Staff Exchange from the Mars-Skłodowska-Curie actions, or big Horizon 2020 projects, which is going to be one of the topics of today's discussion. And something like, let's say, the Sino-European co-funding, where co-funded flagship projects between China and Europe. These are like the reason why I want to distinguish here is that because I want you to know that these kind of projects, they're not really focusing on you personally to apply for them. These are more like you on behalf of your institution join maybe 12 other institutions in China and Europe to apply for something really big. It's understandable that these are projects that takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of participation. And like I said before, there's also a lot of different EU countries that you can look at. We have all the countries of the European Union. Also, in addition to that, there are many associated countries that are also part of the European research area. Today, I will start by talking about the COVID-19 research funding from Horizon 2020, but I will also at the end go over a lot of the individual EU countries and member states of the European Union, what they have to offer, because a lot of that their funding is also open for Chinese collaboration and they are very significant. So I think they might be of interest to this group here. But let's start with the Horizon 2020. Before I talk about the newest call about the COVID-19, I want to explain in one slide what it is. This is, like I said earlier, the research framework program of the European Union. This is the 8th such framework program, starting in 2014 until 2020. So we are actually finishing it this year. So next year we will be seeing the 9th framework program of the European Union for research and technology. This 9th one is going to be called Horizon Europe. And in a lot of ways, everything that I'm explaining right now will also apply to that when that framework program will start. We think right now, according to the newest news, that program will have almost 100 billion euros of money for 7 years. So that's very, very significant. But if the COVID-19 funding we're discussing, all of these calls are all being published under the Horizon 2020 framework program still. So I'm going to use that nomenclature. I guess just like in a nutshell, these within the framework program, you have this big sort of consortium-based funding calls. There are top to bottom. So basically the European Commission will put down some themes some topics that they would like to be researched, and then they will put out a call, and groups of institutions will apply together for this funding. This is theme specific. It funds like also like ideas that are kind of like more basic research up to maybe more like ready for market research, and they are like on a running call. So throughout the year, these calls, they are opening. So it's not, there's no one deadline or one opening of all the calls. But every 2 or 3 years, there will be something called a work plan, where you can see all the lists, or the list over what calls are going to come out in the next 2 or 3 years. So depending on your field, it's a very smart idea to be ready when these work programs come out, so you can really quickly identify which calls are going to be appropriate for you, so you can start preparing, creating a consortium, find partners, and do all the things that are needed to do this before you can apply. The way that they're structured is that you need to have at least 3 partners. And the European Union is not funding research in one European country. The idea is always to connect European countries. So you need at least 3 partners from 3 different countries in Europe. So that is always, for every Horizon 2020 call, this is always a requirement. So you cannot just work with somebody in Germany. You need to work with somebody in, let's say, Czech Republic, Ireland, and Spain, and Germany, maybe. It needs to be at least 3, but normally it's a lot more. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, a lot. And it's also totally open for international collaboration. So it's very, very common that we have partners from other parts of the world outside of Europe. And if you would go to the Cordis database on the European Union website, you'll find that if you put in China, you'll find in that every Chinese big institution have participated in a lot of these already. So this is kind of in a nutshell what Horizon 2020 calls look like and what they're all about. I guess I'm not going to explain this a lot more because I think we should maybe focus more on the COVID-19, but I have a feeling that maybe a lot of the questions that people have might be concerned with this. So if some of this was not very clear to you, feel free to ask questions in the chat box like I invited you to do earlier, and we can maybe go more into the weeds after we have the Q&A session. One thing I want to make clear immediately, that I mean, like, this is always the first question. Even though it's open for international collaboration, it's not automatic that you will be able to move funds from Europe to China. So basically, the European Union, with their funds, they put maybe, let's say, 15 million euros in a project. It needs to be spent in Europe. That is the main idea. Unless you're a developing country, like an African country, something like that, then you might be allowed to get automatic funding. So for Chinese institutions, this is not the case. China is considered an industrialized country, and you guys also have very strong research funding on your own. So it's totally open. It's very common that you work together, but normally what you would need is that you would need some kind of co-funding. And I want to just point out that, I mean, like, there are different ways to co-fund an international partner. You can apply for some other funding. One funding source in particular should be of interest: the Ministry of Science and Technology, Kejibu, in China. They, since 2016, have like a co-funding mechanism with the European Union. So the European Union and China have this co-funding mechanism. So a Chinese institution, if they want to participate in Horizon 2020 and they are already been accepted as a part of it, they can go to the Ministry of Science and Technology in China and apply for this co-funding. So this is something to look into. I will share the contact later with a person in the Kejibu if you want to look into how this is. It might be a little bit tricky right now though, because the funding that we're going to be talking about today is a very special and specifically different type. So we are going to be talking about the coronavirus funding. The European Union sort of reacted really quickly, immediately in January, by putting out a really speedy call, like for expression of interest to fund research project related to the coronavirus. So they put it out on the 30th of January, and at the beginning they were thinking about funding for 10 million euros, but really quickly it was obvious this was a lot bigger thing. So before they accepted things in February, the funding had already ballooned to more than 48 million euros. So but that was good because these projects, they are now already showing some results, and that's very, very, very important for us. So this is the first call. It came out in January. Obviously, this is too late for you to apply for that right now, but we can maybe draw some lessons from it because there are going to be other calls in the future. And I guess the main thing to note here is that unlike a normal Horizon 2020 call, this was very impromptu. It came about really quickly and unexpectedly, let's say. And it was also like it included this very sort of speeded timeline. So instead of getting many years to prepare your application, you got like 2 weeks to be able to do it. And instead of taking many, many months to agree on it and accept the proposals, they were ready within some weeks. And the results were also something that they want, like these projects had to show in a lot quicker than in a normal project. But I also wanted to point out to you that during this time, there was a lot of Chinese participation in different projects. So we had projects in epidemiology, modeling, diagnostics, treatments, and vaccines. And these projects, in the end, there was more than 18 projects that got funding from the European Union. Thereof, there were like 5 projects that had a Chinese partner within them. So I just wanted to like kind of put the spotlight on that. So the project on Recover included the Chinese Academy of Sciences Institute Pasteur in Shanghai, and Quaresma had a partner from the Beijing University of Chemical Technology. There was the Corona DX, who had a Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention as one of the partners. And there was also the project HTN-COVID-19 test, who had this Shenzhen company called MedCaptain as one of the 4 main partners of the project. And I just wanted to take as an example this last one, the HTN-COVID-19 test project, because only last week they already had shown some results. One of the hopes with this project was that they would be kind of quick, and they developed a new test to test coronavirus infections that takes only 30 minutes to show results. And they already finished it, went through all the trials, and got the CE markings, and they're ready for market right now. So this is very, very promising. And this was actually a project that involved, like I said, this Shenzhen company. In all of these cases, the Chinese partner received funding. Even though there's not automatic funding from Europe, there is the idea that if the evaluator of the project thinks that the foreign company is essential to the research that is being done, it can be a reason that they need to get like funding from Europe. In this case, all of them got it. I just still want to make clear that this is not automatically how it goes. For Horizon 2020 calls, you cannot assume this, but it is maybe possible if you make the case and if the evaluator agree with it. But now we have arrived on the second call of Horizon 2020. So they already went through the first call and they're already showing some results. I guess we could say that in this pandemic that has been terrorizing the world, we already entered another phase of it. And there are this new kind of like need to start to research it, more money to figure out how to take the next steps. And the European Union, again, on the 19th of May, published its second call for expression of interest. And this time there's 122 million euros available on topics of behavior, socioeconomics, cohorts, manufacturing, and medical and digital solutions. So if you're working in any of those fields, you'll probably feel like this is very interesting. I just want to put out a little bit disclaimer. I'm gonna now go over these calls a little bit. I'm not an expert on any of them. I have only familiarized myself with them. If you really want something authoritative about it, you should read the text of the calls yourself, or contact the national contact points who can give you better information. But let's take a look at this new call. So it came out on the 19th of May, and it has a deadline on 11th of June. So it's really, really quick. So if you haven't started already, you have really short time. But then again, everybody has very short time. And the idea behind this call is to actually engage research projects that are already ongoing, not necessarily create new research projects. If you are more interested in creating a new research project, there are going to be other calls in the future from Horizon 2020 on that. There's probably not going to be enough time to participate in this one. But let's still take a little bit of a look, see what's going on. Maybe some of this could be very interesting to you. So in a nutshell, we're talking about 5 different topics in 4 areas, and I will go over them, what that is. And what they're really looking for is like wide scale and rapid applications on these 5 topics. And what they want is that it's going to be kind of out and starting to be useful and applied within as quickly as 3 months. Very commonly, they say less than 18 months. So that is what they're looking for. And I guess when you're getting evaluated, if you can convincingly say that you are going to be really quick, have a really big impact really quickly, you're going to have a better chance, because you can read through between the lines that this is what they're looking for. The deadline is 11th of June 2020, like I said, and they will start to inform successful applicants by mid-August, so you can start your project immediately. And actually, the cost, but you can still, like normally in a normal call, you cannot start to build them for costs that happen until after you've signed a grant agreement. But there's going to be an exception for this one. You can start immediately from the deadline, 11th of June. If you start your work right after, you can build it to the European Union and get the money back for that, provided that you get the grant. So this is a little bit of risk, but let's say that you already have this research project going, and you want to go ahead anyway, you might bill them for hours that happened before you signed their grant. If it happened after 11th of June, you can start immediately because they want you to start as quickly as possible. And like I said, the indicative budget is about 122 million euros in total. So a little bit about sort of the concept behind the calls, what they're thinking about it. So all the calls, they need to be include some critical social factors. This is something that's very common in the European Union calls, such as age, social origin, and so on. But maybe more special about this call is that this is not looking for basic research. They're not really looking for something that is like totally new. They don't want projects that are here to develop some new diagnostics or therapeutics, or maybe start a new vaccine research. They know that there's already hundreds of research projects that have started this. So they want to help to push and give money to projects that are already quite successful, but they can kind of give them that extra push for them to be able to complete it and deploy it, something that is like almost readily available. So somebody that's more ready for the market, getting closer to it, are maybe more applicable for this funding. And like I said, it's open for international cooperation with legal entities from third countries, including, China, even though China is not automatically eligible for funding, but it's very open for it. And like I showed you before, there's a lot of institutions that have had good experience with it. The proposals are shorter than normally, maximum 45 pages. And there's also been this effort put into creating a new data portal called the COVID-19 data portal. And they really want to make sure that everybody that is getting this funding is sharing their data in a certain way, because it's one of the very important factors when it comes to this. And then there's also applications when it comes to exploitation, how you're going to be using this. They really want to ensure that this is going to be rapidly available. So you need to make sure and agree to that whatever the results are in the end, they're going to be like readily available, and they're going to be available at fair conditions, let's say. So these are sort of the background variables. Talking about the first one is the repurposing of manufacturing for vital medical supplies and equipment. The topic 2 is on medical technologies, including like digital tools, artificial intelligence applications, and analytics to improve the surveillance and care at high technology readiness level. So something that's really getting ready for market in that sense. And then there's also the one for social sciences, if there are any social scientists here today, on the topics of behavioral and social and economic impacts of the outbreak response. And the last topic has actually 2 different calls associated to it. They're both related to cohort studies. The first call is on pan-European COVID-19 cohort, and then the second one is about networking of existing EU and international cohorts of relevance to COVID-19. Let's take a look at the first one. Repurposing of manufacturing for vital medical supplies and equipment. What does this mean? We have found out during the pandemic that one of the biggest, most important thing is to be able to really quickly react with industry to start to produce medical supplies and equipment. And the best way to do that is to take whatever facilities that we have and change them. But how can we do that really quickly? That is the question. And that is where we need some innovation. And there are obviously a lot of research projects working on this, and the European Union wants to fund those kind of projects if they're close to market. So some of the key words you have to keep in mind, like they want flexible supply chains, they want more automation for like something obvious, and because during a pandemic a lot of the staff is not going to be available, and being able to train and qualify operators really quickly, if they have to change their tasks. And they want this impact really quickly, so they're looking for something that it can be like out in the market in 3 to 18 months. Solutions that demonstrate a flexible 48-hour industrial response. And so they're looking for something that's quite ready, technologies that are quite ready for the market, from what they call a technology readiness level from 6 to 8. And the budget is about 23 million euros in total, so as indicated. So, and they're thinking about like 5 to 6 million euros per project. So that is let's say this is about like 4 to 5 projects that they're looking for probably. I will share the presentation later, and you can there click on the topic here, and that will take you to the database where you get the ultimate information about it. The second one is medical technologies, digital tools, artificial intelligence, analytics, etc. And the idea here is also to support solutions that are close to market. Or support market innovation, if something is kind of proven to work in lab, to get that to like to fabrication. So they're looking for cost-effective and easily deployable sampling, screening, diagnostic, and prognostic systems. Environmental surveillance, maybe, for example, looking into the air and sewage to find some kind of indicators that can help you to manage this pandemic. And some data analytics, low-cost sensors, smart wearable devices, robotics and AI for telemedicine, for example, and protection of healthcare practitioner, for example, data-driven services and tools, but also like new materials and other things that will help in this situation. And they want to accelerate the deployment and the marketing of new health technology within 3 to maybe up to 24 months. The budget for this is 56 million euros indicated, so and about 2 to 5 million euros per project. So you can see that they're looking to fund more than 10 projects, 10 to 11. But there's also another element to it, another dimension. They are going to put 10 million euros to accelerators. So like up to 10 million euros to them, so a little bit more money. So there's going to be like this intermediary people that could maybe give 20 to 100,000 euros to third parties, kind of distributed to even smaller projects out there through an accelerator that will apply through this project with some good idea how they want to go about that in a effective way. Again, you can see the link at the bottom here. The third topic is on behavioral, social, and economic impacts of the outbreak response. This is, of course, also very important, as we found out, especially economic impact is something that's very obvious to everybody, but there are also other impacts that are really important. So the European Union is going to put 20 million euros in this as well. This is maybe a project that is more focusing on like the social sciences and the humanities. The projects like researchers in field of psychology, economics, other fields like that. The idea is to find ways to mitigate the social and economic impacts, identify the non-intended consequences, so you can basically help to create more evidence-based policy for policymakers when they are deciding which measures to take. The idea is to improve the resilience, the well-being, and the mental health of the populations. The link to this topic is also on the bottom here. The final topic I want to take a look at now are the cohort studies. So if you're already involved in a big cohort project, cohort is when you have like these huge populations of people where you study them throughout time, taking into account a lot of different variables. This is maybe something of interest to you, because the first call, this is the only topic that have two different calls. The first call has basically about 20 million euros for one project that is supposed to be really big, to able to include a huge cohort to study sort of study the preferably they want to have cohorts that already have a lot of data on a lot of people, and they want to be able to use that data to study the COVID-19. And normally, if you want to have good enough data, you would like a cohort that is big enough. So the idea here with all this big budget is to create like a group of a lot of different cohorts that are already working together within Europe, but also all over the world, because the more varied the sampling is, the better information you're going to get about genetic differences and other things like this. This is the first call. The second call is about 2 to 3 million euros. This is actually more of a administrative kind of idea, in the way that they want to fund the networking of existing EU and international cohorts of relevant to COVID-19. So you get money to connect together cohorts that exist into a big network to create like a network of cohorts. So this is like another separate thing they're trying to achieve. I've added here some information for you after you download this presentation later. You can click on a detailed description of these calls, much more detailed than I was able to go into. And there was also an information session that took place at the European Commission on the 20th of May last week. That was like 3 hours, so they will talk about it in more detail to answer better questions and so on. If you're interested in that, you should click that link to see the recording. Ultimately, though, the information that you need should all be in the Fundings and Tender Opportunities portal. There's a link to that over here, but also if you would go through like what we were discussing earlier, these topics, you can go directly to each topic at the funding portal by clicking it there. Finally, they always direct people to go with more technical questions to the national contact points. National contact points is this network of people in every country that are kind of working for the European Union to share information about these things. The best national contact points are maybe the contact point from the European country. So if you are working with somebody in Germany or Italy, you can go to the German national contact point or the Italian national contact points in your particular fields, and they will be able to give you really good information. But there's also a national contact point here in China. It's actually SysTech, which is an agency of the Ministry of Science and Technology. You can contact them as well. The contact is Mr. Dong Jin. His email is here on the screen. He will also be able to help you out with the answering questions about the co-funding mechanism. So if you want to get co-funding from the Chinese authorities to be able to participate on Horizon 2020 call, he is the man that can tell you more information about that. I'm going to really quickly also mention that the European Union has been funding a lot of different other projects. The Horizon 2020 are very important, but there's also this ongoing infrastructure that we have that has been spending money on. Some of this could be interest of you. The Escalate for COVID is like this huge supercomputer that is very cheap way to analyze different chemicals, and they've been like opening up for projects all over the world. The European Cluster Collaboration Platform. There was the EU versus the virus hackathon. I guess we could like put our spotlight on the Innovative Medicines Initiative in particular, IMI, who have already put 117 million euros in grants for treatments and diagnostics, and etc. I will end my presentation by going over a little bit of the funding available in the member states and the associated countries of the European Union. Because, like I said earlier, the European Union itself has very, very big funding capability, but it's only part of the funding available in the European research area. As you can imagine, since this pandemic started to spread after January, every country on this planet has been trying to find ways to deal with it. So we have a lot of different countries in Europe that have been very active in publishing a lot of big calls on COVID-19 for researchers. A lot of them are very big, maybe like 5, 6, 7 million euros. Or maybe there are like more of them, and each of them are maybe 100,000 to 200,000 euros and so on. And all of the ones that I'm looking at here are already something that we have been through. They already finished the deadline, but we will. I still want to point it out because this will maybe help you to figure out who are likely to continue putting out calls. I guarantee you, none of these countries have stopped putting out their calls yet. You can look at here, France has already 4 calls out. So even though I don't have the newest call from them, I don't know when that will come out, they will definitely do. There are other countries here you can also take a look at. Yeah. And then there are 4 or 5 calls here that are open. I want to really quickly go through because these are something that have not deadlines that are ready yet, so you might be interested to learn a little bit about. We'll start with Austria. So the Austrian Research Science Fund is offering quite a bit of money for urgent funding for research into this humanitarian crisis. The deadline for this one is the 30th of September. So this is something you might look into. There's also the Danish Novo Nordisk Foundation, who have 20 million Danish krona, or about 3 billion euros, for societal responses to this viral infection. This one has a deadline that's coming up on the 4th of June. This is open to international organization. There's the DFG, the German Research Foundation, who has a call on 1st of September with a deadline, but a letter of intent needs to be out by 1st of July. This is the biggest research foundation in Germany, so you might want to take a look at this one. It's for multidisciplinary research into epidemics. And the DFG is also involved in a project with the Sino-German Center, which is part of the NSFC, Natural Science Foundation of China, here in Beijing. And they have a special COVID-19 research program with a deadline on the 7th of July for almost 4 million euros. So this is in cooperation with NSFC, so you might want to look into this. There's a really good and long history of experience working together between the German Research Foundation and the NSFC. And the Swedish Research Council also has a special initiative. And the European Union Amable, for example, has a new initiative as well. And I just wanted to take a quick look at this to kind of give you an idea that there are other things going on, and also encourage you to just keep yourself open for this call, because when they come out, they're really going to be quick, and you're not going to have a lot of time to react to them. And you will not know them beforehand that this is coming out. This is why I want to show you what has been happening and what we have going on right now, because surely there's going to be more coming up. And one way to kind of follow all of this is to follow EURAXESS, our organization. So I will end my presentation just really quickly mention how this happens. So during the COVID epidemic, we have been actively pushing out through our different channels and emails all these different funding opportunities. During February, March, when most of these calls came out, you could have seen it on our WeChat channel, what was up, what funding was available in different European countries, and you could have also seen it in the weekly emails that we sent. So I just wanted to encourage you to join our network so you can maybe see what's going up, we can remind you if there are any new calls coming out and so on. So this is actually one of the things that EURAXESS China does. We help people to find information how to do research between China and Europe and collaborate and move and be mobile researcher. We help people to find funding and research jobs. We help people to find and meet new potential research partners. And we also do all kinds of activities connected to networking, sharing intelligence and experience. We do it through our tools. We have a website. You can see it here at the bottom right called china.euraxess.org, where we put very regularly a lot of information. We also have different publications, newsletter, the weekly email, and all of these things that I just explained. And we also do a lot of events, information session like what we're doing today, but we also do networking events and conferences and other things like that that could be interesting to you to join. A lot of it is in Beijing, but we also do it in other places in China, Shanghai, Guangzhou, different places. So yeah, if you want to develop your network of contacts in the Sino-European research community and keep track of the latest developments in Sino-European research, find out about new funding and career opportunities, you can, partner up with EURAXESS, become a member of our network, and we can help you out with this. It's totally free to join. We're very official. We're part of the European Commission sort of initiative from them. So we are here to be trusted. We are well connected to the EU delegation and other European projects in here in China, so we can help you out a lot, I think, and I hope that we can be of some use to you. At the very least, I encourage you to scan the QR code here and become part of the WeChat channel of EURAXESS if you want to take a look and see what we're up to. So that is it for me today. I hope that some of this was interesting to you. I'm sure that you have questions. I see that there have been some questions in the chat box. We will take a look at that at the end. But before that, I want to give the word to my colleague, Richard Dong, who will explain to you a little bit about the services and the things that his organization, Enrich, has to offer. Richard, are you here?